I'm just saying, it's called All That Glitters. I wish it were gayer. I wish we were here to do something gay, but we're not.
It's weird. I think Playboy is super gay.
Sure, but like it's just sad. It's like,
I know, it's so
also sad.
I know. Well, we'll
I'm
be covering
gay.
it on the podcast then. Yeah, we have you.
You know what I mean?
You fill all the quota that we need for
What
this.
if some lady somewhere just heard that was like, what? He's what?
I'm going to hold your hand while I say this, dear listener.
Yeah.
He's been gay the whole time.
The whole time! Hi, Julia Benzavali.
Hi, Patrick Hines.
Hey, fam. Join the Facebook group. We got like 52,000 people in there.
Something like that.
I mean, it's just like everyone's best friends, and we're just hanging out, and we're in there a lot, and we're sharing. Like, people really go there for community to make friends. I love the splinter groups. I love all, like, the meetups.
In your local groups. Like, people are.
The Northern California group recently had another meetup. The Salt Lake City's still going strong. We're seeing it all over the place. I'm obsessed.
I love it. It's the best.
Me too. So it's a True Crime Obsessed podcast discussion group. Just go find it on the old Facey. It's on the Book of Face.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, Facey threw me off. I was like, oh, God, is this another password I need to remember?
Oh, God.
A new login? Nope.
What are we talking about today, girl?
Welcome to our bonus episodes that we do from time to time.
Yes.
I believe this is our 13th one. We are doing another episode of the show The Playboy Murders, which we've covered before. This is season 1, episode 2. It's called All That Glitters, but it's about Stacy and Jim Arthur.
But Playboy handles tragedies by burying them and not acknowledging them.
It's just this downward spiral, and that's when his behavior really starts to get out of control.
I remember telling her, you really should not do this. I don't think it's a good idea.
Several witnesses were later identified as hearing what they thought was a loud argument.
All the dreams aren't necessarily what's really important. All that glitters isn't gold.
It was very scary. If someone's capable of murder, they could murder you.
It's really well done. I really love Holly Madison. We love her, right?
She's great.
Yeah.
And she does a lot, just really showing the dark side of Playboy, how, like, on one hand, it was, the first time women were, like, seen as, like, sexy and powerful, but at the same time, it has a really fucking dark, scary history.
Yeah.
And she's the one telling us these stories.
These women were not protected. You know what I mean?
No,
and they were
a fucking
exploited.
monster.
Like,
Hugh Hefner was a fucking disgusting predator monster. Asshole.
Great. Oh, my God.
Those are my thoughts on Hugh Hefner. I hate him.
It's funny. They never mention him in these episodes. He never comes up.
I know. It's weird because they do talk about, like, how the corporation doesn't protect women. But there's got to be something on Hugh Hefner and his awfulness, which, I'll look into.
All right, great. Well, we're in Bellefontaine, Ohio. It's October 29th, 1991. We meet Officer Jim, and he was in a local gun shop. Fine. Responsible gun ownership. We did this in a recent episode.
Yeah.
We're all fine with responsible gun ownership.
It's October 1991. He's a retired cop.
Yeah. And he says a person comes in and says there's a gunfight happening in the street. And Jim says,
Myself and another off-duty officer ran out. We found 2 bodies lying in the street with pools of blood around them and spent casings from the .22 revolver.
Pools of blood around them, and spent casings from a .22 revolver.
And it was in public, broad daylight, like it was on Main Street with a lot of stores.
Yes, it's just wild.
And he says it was a bewildering moment, and we will get back to that.
Yes.
So January 1991, Stacy Arthur was Playmate of the Month.
Yeah. So, we get this a lot in the Playboy Murders. Like, many, many women in the 90s and 2000s thought of Playboy as like a stepping stone to a career.
Yeah.
And like, it's funny because I don't feel like it really was.
Yeah. I mean, I think...
Look, there's Pamela Anderson, but like, I can't name a handful of other women who went on to be like really like famous and successful.
Yeah.
I guess because I'm thinking of it in terms of like, they didn't become movie stars, but they like Playboy was its own success.
Exactly.
To be like a famous Playboy model was its own success.
And then you wore that badge of I was a Playboy, I was in the magazine, or I was whatever, and then you can kind of go forward.
I guess it surprises nobody that that's not really a world that I would necessarily know a lot of the women in.
The Playboy bunnies?
You know what I mean? Yeah. As much as I would like love to hang out and be like go drinking with them all, it's not the kind of thing that like I didn't have a favorite. You know what I mean?
Right. We're not watching The Girls Next Door.
No, although that feels pretty gay.
I was gonna say, that's pretty gay.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of thing I would watch.
Yeah.
When I'm in my 60s, I'm going to, like, go back into, like, the golden age of, like, shitty reality TV and watch
the
all
Osbournes.
Of it. Oh, my God, yes.
Sharon.
Yes.
Sharon.
You know, I once went to the Osbournes' house while they were filming. I did not get to go inside. My friend Amaya was Jack's assistant.
She was on the Amaya from the Real World Hawaii.
Amaya from the Real World Hawaii.
Yeah.
Yep. We had to go to the house to pick something up, and I was not allowed to come in because they were were filming.
Because they were filming.
But Amaya went in.
Amaya went in.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I know.
There's like very famous little pocket, like little quotes from that, like where everyone was always mad at Ozzy for whatever reason on that
Really?
show. I didn't want, but there's a quote where he's like, Jack, are you mad at me as well? And he like never knows why, and everyone's mad. And Sharon's always like, Minnie pooped on the carpet.
Your Sharon Osbourne is amazing.
It's Amy Poehler's.
Oh
so
my God.
I'm just doing
It's
Amy
so
doing.
good.
Oh, Minnie.
Did you watch The Osbournes?
No, but it's in enough of the zeitgeist that I kind of have little moments of it. Like,
That's amazing.
It's a weird thing, and I think we've seen enough clips of it, or I don't know. It's become.
There was a time in my life where I would get mistaken for Jack Osbourne.
Really?
When he was like in his chubby like glasses phase. There was a time that at least one time somebody asked me if I was Jack Osbourne.
What'd you say?
No, I said I am not that person.
You're not.
I am a slender 125-pound twink with not one fleck of hair on my body.
And we're back to gay. It never takes long.
Never takes that long.
Turning this car around.
Yeah, the secret is that I did not and will not and have not ever looked like that.
Okay, great.
The twink, I mean.
The twink. We meet Karina Harney-Jones, and she was the Playmate of the Year in 1992.
That's a big fucking deal.
Huge.
Karina, you did it.
Huge.
That's the kind of celebrity we're talking about.
1992 Playmate of the Year.
I mean, that's wild.
Wild. And she talks about, we get this a lot too in the series, like her first time at the mansion. And she goes, I looked around and you're like, oh, this place is spectacular. And it's supposed to be. That's how they get you.
She's like, everything there was just like, wow. It was like at your fingertips. Celebrities wanted you. And when she says that, it cuts to a picture of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air cast. Like
all of them?
Alfonso Rivera and Will
Aunt
Smith.
Viv?
It wasn't Aunt Viv, but it was the sister. Oh, what was her? Hillary.
Hillary.
It was like Hillary and Alfonso and Will Smith, and I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Weird. It's a weird like I wouldn't associate that with Playboy.
Who came first, Hillary or Cher Horowitz? Because one of them walks so the other could run.
Oh, Cher Horowitz came first. I would say Cher Horowitz came first. Yeah, I think so. I could be wrong.
I don't know, but they seem one walks so the other could run.
My favorite thing I think about Hillary Banks from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is that she keeps losing her house key and her dad gets mad and she's like, don't worry, Daddy. I wrote the address down on the key so that people could return it to me.
My favorite little surprise about characters like that is that they really are smart.
Yeah,
they kind of like this.
Totally.
So like Cher in Clueless, like when Paul Rudd yells at the guy where he's like, oh, she's such an idiot. And Paul Rudd's like, she's not an idiot.
Yeah.
I just love that moment where it's like, no, the whole thing is that she could either negotiate her straight A's or just get the straight A's.
Totally. I love that.
I just love when that comes out and you're like, yeah. So she says you have all kinds of things at your fingertips and this whole wow factor moment.
And that Stacy, the sort of protagonist of this story, she felt that way too.
Right. So we meet her sister-in-law, Jana Arthur, and she's here to tell us about Stacy's upbringing.
Stacy graduated from high school in 1986. She was rather quiet, beautiful girl, very talented in crafts and ceramic work.
She was very talented in crafts and ceramic work.
Love that for her.
I was like, oh, are we throwing clay this afternoon? I love that. We're going to fire it in the kiln or whatever.
Maybe she's making mugs for everyone or ashtrays or whatever. Loving it. I love that.
But by the spring of 1988, she was the manager of a craft store in Belle Fountain.
And so Jana's brother is Jim, who is Stacy's, at the time, soon-to-be husband. And he had opened a tanning salon in that same building of the craft store, and that's how they met.
Yes.
They do tell us that she was 19 and he was 34. No one here has a problem with that.
No one has a problem with it, but I did clock it.
It's a little okay.
Yes. The thing about it is that she was a 19-year-old fucking bombshell. He looked like me. And so but I mean that truly, and but the point was none of that mattered to either of them. They were so in love.
And also she had sort of lived this whole life before him because she was married before she met him and she had a kid from that marriage at 19 years old.
But she'd
been through a lot.
He had 2 kids. They get married when she is 19 years old. She adopts both of his kids.
Yeah.
Now, I want to say now, because it takes the episode too long to tell us, Jim is not the bad guy.
He's not the bad guy.
It is absolutely wonderful to love him because he is not the bad guy.
He's not the bad guy.
Yeah.
But Danielle Arthur is Jim Arthur's daughter from a previous marriage.
And Stacy's daughter, too, because Stacy adopts her when she's a baby.
Right. And Danielle's everyone was super happy together.
Yes.
Because on June 4th, 1988, the two of them get married. And Danielle was like, I have to tell you.
She was the only mom I ever knew for a long time. When she came into my life, I was still very little. It was no feat for me to call her mom because she was there. I don't remember ever not calling her mom.
she's just there to say, like, we really were the big happy family that it looks like we were in photos. Like, that is no bullshit. That is real.
Right. And it's this amazing blended family because, like you were saying, Stacy had a daughter and Jim had a son and a daughter. So now it's like the three of them, they're all like siblings and it's like one big happy family.
Yeah. And so Stacy was like really pretty and she had this big, like beautiful hair and super high heels. And Danielle loved dressing up in all of her like fancy, glamorous clothes.
I gotta tell you, like, Daisy is just, we've had to buy Daisy adult women's heels.
Stop.
Because
she wants to slide in them.
Yes, she wants that experience of like putting on like mom's heels and like walking around and like it's just like so girly and cute and she's so into it.
What is the fanciest kind of shoe that she has right now at 10 years old?
I mean, her fanciest shoe is probably her pink Doc Marten.
Cute.
You know what I mean?
What are we thinking about with a heel? Like what's...
She has like a little kitten heel. She's got like a little, it's probably a 1-inch heel.
Great.
She calls them her heels.
Of course.
She loves to wear them at all, like in any weather. When we take the dog out in December, she wants to wear her heels.
I mean, obviously.
And they're sparkly. They're little drag queen heels and she loves them.
Obsessed.
You
Okay,
know?
Perfect. So after they get married, Stacy starts modeling. And Jim became her manager, her support staff. Like he was really, really supportive in her career. And again, he is not the bad guy here, not even close.
Not the bad guy. And like Stacy, her career takes off like a rocket.
She's in the pageant circuit. She's winning. If there's a trophy to be won, Stacy's winning it. She wins 32 trophies, which is unbelievable.
Then in 1990, she wins Mrs. Ohio. She was the youngest competitor. She swept the competition, and it was her first time. She won on her first time. Yeah. They say that never happens.
I think I said unbelievable by mistake instead of unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
Before anyone calls me out, I heard it. I'm correcting it. But because it's 32 trophies really is unbelievable.
That is wild. It's just like she was meant for this. Like it's every door is opening for her.
She swept the competition. They say
everything's coming up, Stacy, as you say.
100%.
Yeah.
And like she won it on her first time out, which never happens. Like she's really meant to be in this world. She's really, really good at it. She had this husband who loved her and supported her and wasn't insecure about it.
But he also like sees beyond the pageant world.
Jim saw beyond what was happening right in front of her, and he wanted to help her reach for the stars. He wanted to help her achieve and be the best she could be, which led her to Playboy.
He really wanted to help her, like, quote, reach for the stars.
Right.
So, like, Playboy is the thing.
And in 1990, when you're in the pageant circuit, Jim recognizes, like, that's the next step for her.
For sure.
Because she's so good at this. Like, she's not just going the next step. She's, like, catapulting 10 steps ahead.
Yes.
So Holly explains, like, look, it's not that unusual for husbands to want their wives to be in Playboy.
Yeah.
Men see it as, like, a badge of honor. But she's like, on the other hand, you need to be secure like Jim.
Yes.
To really be supportive and be like good at it, because being in Playboy comes with a lot of stuff.
My thing here, my note was like, how about we make it not about the partner at all? You know what I mean? How about we just make it about like the woman wants to do this and like she's a badass, beautiful woman. You know what I mean?
Right, but shitty people make things about themselves all the time.
I know, and I just hate it. That's my point, kind of, is that like I hate that we have to talk about the men and how like in order for the women to go like live their fantasy and like live their dream and be successful, they have to deal with the fact that like all the men in their lives are just going to be fucking jealous monsters.
Or sometimes the women are successful and they meet a man and the man is like, no, I can totally handle it. You're my badge of honor. And then gets psychotic and jealous and kills them.
And it's that. And it's also like, stop calling them your trophy. How about you just say, this is my successful wife?
Yeah. I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of what she's been able to accomplish.
Yeah.
How about that?
Meanwhile, Steve is totally my trophy husband.
I mean. So after she wins Miss Ohio in 1990.
So after she won Mrs. Ohio, she continued to model. That led her to a gig in Chicago. And while they were out there, they stopped in at the Playboy headquarters. Jim said, let's do it while we're here. And she said, sure, let's go.
And they stop at the Playboy headquarters in Chicago. And this is where I learned that Playboy was based in Chicago.
Is that right?
I didn't know that.
Well,
they said the Playboy headquarters?
Yeah, I had the same thought, but I was like, do they have headquarters like in many cities? I don't know.
I didn't know that. I thought it was like just the mansion.
Or like,
or something.
Right.
Like, and now that I'm saying it, I'm like, you're an idiot.
No,
like,
no.
Like the headquarters in Chicago, I'm like, oh, okay, so great.
But my thing was like, you can just
Obviously,
walk
they
in.
needed like offices. I knew that part of it. But to me, it just made sense that it was like all California or something.
Yeah,
like,
they would have like the office in LA next to the Chippendales or whatever.
But here we go, Playboy headquarters.
Well, my thing is too, it's just like you can just walk into the Playboy headquarters and be like, hi, she's pretty, she won a pageant. Can we have a contract? Thank you. Contract, please.
Contract, please. I get the sense that her name was sort of being floated.
Yes.
Or they sent photos. I mean, 32 trophies, winning Miss Ohio. It seems like you're kind of on the Playboy radar.
And she's like, she looks exactly like a Playboy model.
Right. Or you can walk in, because back in 1990, like, I mean, even actors were like going around dropping off headshots. That's sort of how things were done.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they're like, look at her. Also, like, she's wearing her Miss Ohio sash she just won 2 days ago.
Totally.
And here's her resume. Like, I can't carry all the trophies, but like, I wonder if they were like, oh, okay.
If I ever won a beauty pageant, I would never take the sash off.
Right?
I think the chances of me winning a beauty pageant are small.
I don't know about that. I wouldn't say that.
Maybe they've improved a little over the last year, but not by much.
No,
You know what I mean?
I hate that. Don't say that about yourself.
But I'm just saying, if I ever did win, the sash is with me forever.
Forever.
I'm sleeping in it.
Yeah.
I'm showering in it.
Like, my whole thing is like, if there's an outfit that you love,
yeah.
wear it if you have plans or not.
Yes.
If you want to do the dishes in your sequin gown, fucking do it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
if you have something that makes you feel amazing,
Yep.
wear the shit
Wear
out
the
of it.
living shit out
I
of
don't
it.
care. Like,
Yeah.
oh, is that the occasion called for it? I don't care.
I know.
You feel amazing in it, wear it.
Steve and I recently put on our suits because we were going to London and we had to try them on before we left. And Daisy hadn't seen us in suits in a long time, or maybe ever. And we came out at the same time. We're like, Daisy, what do you think? And she looked up and her eyes.
Like a real cartoon double take.
Yeah.
Like,
and she goes, oh, daddies.
Round
and
of
she
applause.
clapped and she goes, you look perfect.
how sweet.
It was so nice.
She's like, have you seen my kitten heel though?
I know, but maybe I won that beauty contest.
You see
I
what
won
I'm
that
saying?
pageant.
Absolutely.
Thank you
did.
so much. So Holly is just saying that, like, to outsiders, Playboy looked like really glamorous and upscale and just like really worldly. And like Playboy was really, really mainstream in the 90s. Like making it in Playboy was like a big, big deal.
And Holly says, like, having a pageant queen on the cover would really legitimize the magazine, because there were some people who were like, oh, it's like, saying in a derogatory way, like,
Yeah.
oh, they're strippers, or oh, they're this, or oh, they're that. And Holly is saying, like, for the time,
Yes.
having like a quote, like, wholesome pageant queen would really skyrocket the magazine.
Am I wrong? Like Playboy is pornography.
I mean, it's naked women in there, right?
Right, and
so
I'm
I
not
guess
like
technically.
I have nothing against pornography, but I'm just saying
Right.
that like Playboy is pornography, and like we will see eventually that
And very good articles.
and very good articles, which is actually true.
Which is actually true.
But it does not go both ways. Like Playboy is thrilled to have a pageant queen. The pageants aren't so thrilled to have a
No,
Playboy
they're not.
queen.
Right,
You know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's pornography.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with being involved in pornography if that's what you want to do.
Oh my God.
But like these two like worlds do not necessarily come together.
Right. So Stacy gets these photos done. She does some video and they send it to Playboy. They get like a reel and like a package together for Playboy.
Yeah.
And Playboy's like, yes, we love it. I want 14 more, whatever that TikTok is, where it was like, amazing. I love it. Give me 14 more. Do you want to know what's in it? No, I want 14 more of them.
Holly is saying this timeline is unheard of.
Because they like what they see in this package, and a month later they fly her out to LA for a Playmate shoot. And
Yes.
Holly's like, this fast track is, at the time, absolutely unheard of.
And like because she's gonna be the centerfold and the cover.
And we'll get to that in a minute.
But like Holly's like,
This must have been a whirlwind for Stacy to go from being from a small town in Ohio and just a month later you're being flown out to LA, you're staying at the Playboy Mansion, you're doing this shoot for a huge magazine. She was definitely fast-tracked.
Holly says later, even it didn't happen that fast for me. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
And for the time, like, it was still in 1990, whatever.
Yeah.
But we talk real quick about the sex grotto. We take like a detour into the sex grotto.
Yeah, because we're back with Karina, who was the Playmate of the Year in 1992, because she roomed with Stacy at the mansion.
Right.
And so they become friends really quickly. And I love Stacy because everyone's nervous and they want to do the right thing. But Stacy's like, can we go down to the pool and like the grotto?
I just want to, because it's like the stuff of legend.
Of
so once you're
course.
there, you kind of want to see. And Holly is so funny here. She's like, and the grotto where like allegedly
Yeah.
many people had sex there. And
Yes.
like certainly a lot of people did. But she
Totally.
had to throw in allegedly. I'm like, Holly, no one's going to sue you for saying
Oh,
they
of course.
fucked in the grotto.
But like they're allowed to go and just like swim in the pool. Aren't they like encouraged to do that?
well, yeah.
Yeah.
The women?
Yes.
Of course they
Because
are.
like Stacy and Karina are like, are we allowed? Should we go? Yeah, let's just go. And they all go and they have like the best time.
Also, like, you got to pump that shit full of chemicals to clean it out. The
Oh,
sex grotto,
God.
right?
Oh my God. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But in 1990, Stacy competes in the Miss America pageant.
In the USSR,
Yeah.
they say.
Moscow,
I
whatever.
know. Back in the USSR.
But that while she's there, that's when the story breaks that she's going to be a Playboy cover model.
She was one of the few that were ever selected to be on the cover and the centerfold. Marilyn Monroe was one other.
In the 90s, the cover of Playboy was usually reserved for a celebrity pictorial. Pamela Anderson is the only other example I can think of who was a Playmate of the Month who was on the cover immediately.
this trajectory, like she was born to do this. She's a total star.
And on top of that, just being on the cover right away also never happens. And Holly says like Pamela Anderson is the only person she could think of right now off the top of her head. And maybe like just in terms of like, she was spotted on like the Jumbotron at some baseball game. Yeah. And like 6 months later, she's on the cover of Playboy. Totally. So like that kind of trajectory. So then the double whammy of like the centerfold and the cover, like Stacy Arthur was a superstar.
Superstar.
But this, of course, like you're saying, scandalizes the pageant world.
Yeah. I mean,
can't
of course.
Believe it.
Like you can go from pageant to Playboy, but you can't go back. You know what I mean?
And Holly says something amazing here. She goes, it's so weird how people sometimes react to a woman posing nude. Like it suddenly becomes everyone else's problem.
Well, remember Vanessa Williams? Like, wasn't she stripped of her Miss America title because they like nude photos were, and it was like topless photos of Vanessa Williams came out and they stripped her of the title. It's like
so insane.
It's so insane.
Because Holly says like not only that, right, does it become this major problem and everyone else's problem, but she says some people think that it grants them some kind of ownership over you.
Yes.
And I'm like, right. And that is the issue that we run into with this series.
And just in general, the way that these industries commodify women, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you are owned by Playboy, you know? Yes, it is about you like being in your sexuality and being strong and being powerful. And that is amazing. But like at the end of the day, the problem that we always run into, the reason we get to where we're going in this episode is because Playboy exploits these women.
Right. And we don't have terms like parasocial relationships like we do now in 1990. So they were really manipulating and exploiting that, which we'll get to. But this is, of course, a major lifestyle change for Stacy Arthur.
Yeah.
Well, she went from a small town girl to making Playboy history in 18 months.
And like Jim is her manager. It's like he just wants more and more and more for her. Like he's booking all of her appearances. He's managing her career and she's getting what she wants. And, you know, Holly says, like, once again, if you're being managed by the wrong kind of person, it's usually too late once you realize it's a problem.
Yeah.
This is not Jim.
No, it's not Jim at all.
It's not Jim.
And Stacy, like we were saying, like Playboy is such a stepping stone. Like Stacy also really wanted to be a country music star.
She was trying to get a music career started in country music, and she was trying to get established in Nashville at the time. And Playboy had backed her on that, so they were trying to help her with the connections in Nashville.
Playboy, the fact that she had that is helping her be a country music star and making these connections down in Nashville.
Yes.
And we also get a quick video of Stacy introducing Whiskey the dog to all of their kids.
Oh, I missed that somehow.
I didn't.
Okay.
I used to know a dog named Whiskey in the apartment that I just moved from. We were in love with each other.
Oh my
we
God.
would like see each other from down the street and like run to each other. I love Whiskey. I think about her a lot.
Steve's brother, Chris, and his wife, Laura, when they lived in New York, they had a dog named Whiskey.
I love her.
Whiskey was like a sickly old bastard. He just was like not a happy dog.
This Whiskey was old, but like super happy. And she and Fiona liked each other, but I gotta say, it was me and Whiskey forever.
Yeah.
Like we were like, usually the dogs spot each other from half a block away and they're like, oh, my friend. No. With this, it was me and Whiskey. So Whiskey, and you're human, if you're listening, I love and miss you so much.
God, I love that.
I love Whiskey.
I want to just say quickly, we get back to Karina, and she's just saying that, like, you know, she was the Playmate of the Year 1992. But before that, she really looked up to Stacy when they first met because she felt like she was really accomplished and she had won the pageant. She won Mrs. Ohio. She thought that was really cool. But she tells this story that, like, Jim was really proud of Stacy and really took really good care of her.
Really hands-on.
Really hands-on, but, like, in a very supportive way. And Karina's saying, like, when we would stay at the mansion, like, he would call and I would talk to him and he would check in with me and make sure that Stacy had everything she needed.
Like, oh,
and
I hear you guys are roommates together. Have fun, ladies.
And, like, she was being looked after, you know? And like, you never hear this in this world.
Yeah, and he was doing, like, her hair and makeup and nails or helping with that. And it's like, I know we live in a different world now, but in 1990, for a man to be, like, helping you with your hair, like, could have been seen as so emasculating.
Totally.
And meanwhile, Jim's like, or I can help my wife live her dreams.
Right.
What's the problem
Because,
here?
but also, like, it's the family business at this point. You know what I mean? So it's definitely supporting the dream, but it's also supporting the business.
And in the world we live in, especially in 1990, it's not lasting long.
Yes.
So if she is riding this wave, you have to support her and help her. And like for him to be like helping her with her nails and her like, like quote, like superficial or like the vanity stuff, like a lot of men would have been like, I'm not doing that.
Absolutely not.
Like what if the guy's here? It's like, oh, if the guy's here, you're at the Playboy Mansion helping. Like, are you kidding me?
Exactly.
Men are so stupid.
So Holly now tells us, this was a revelation to me. I did not know this. In the 90s, when Playboy was casting for Playmate of the Year, they wanted to know who people wanted.
So they would have this 1-900 number people could call to cast a vote. Like they would press a number for whatever month. But also there was this component of it where callers could elect to have a conversation with the actual playmates, and actually speaking to the playmate over the 1-900 number would make the playmate seem so much more accessible.
You could actually talk
Potentially
to some of the playmates.
Which is also how they get sucked in, right? It's like, maybe if I call, so I'll call 1,000,000 times, and maybe on time 99, I'll get a playmate.
But it's also like the 900 numbers were like $3.99 a minute.
Right. So you could either leave playmates messages, or you could listen to pre-recorded messages, and playmates would sometimes answer calls personally, and $3 a minute. Now, Stacy, she's a hard worker. She has an amazing work ethic. She took this phone line very, very seriously. She really wanted to be playmate of the year.
And she really thinks that it's a straight line, that if I take all the calls, I work 100 hours, I do this thing, I connect with the fans, I connect with the men, I play the game, that's going to be the thing that's going to get her playmate of the year.
Now, the minute I hear about this hotline, my stomach sinks.
I know.
I'm like, this is so dangerous.
Of course.
There was no training. There are anonymous men. They have access to their fantasy woman. They're asking them all of these questions, anything they want. And Karina explains, okay, well, look, there was some guidelines here. Like, she says the men were immediately disconnected if things went south because there was an operator who was listening in.
Yeah.
They would pull the plug on the calls. But it's like, what counted as going south in 1990?
Exactly.
And you also, like, you're doing this to, like, get their vote. So the woman on the other end of the phone, because we're, like, conditioned to be nice and be people pleasers.
Yep.
And Playboy has instructed them that, like, the more these anonymous men vote for you, like, you're just kind of put in the position to, like, let things go.
And also keep them on the phone, keep them talking. And what that means is that these men would sometimes find a way to get subtle hints about where they lived, information about their family, where they were going to be later in the day, later in the week. Because if Stacy's like, I got to talk to this guy for 25 minutes, it's like, what kind of information is she going to give up accidentally?
And she was keeping them on the phone because you can make like $150 for 3 hours of work. And we learned that because, like, being on the pageant circuit and all those trophies are great, but it's a major expense.
Yes.
They have big expenses, a lot of travel. So they start having money troubles around this time where it's not as steady as they would like. This was a way to keep money coming in and to keep all the lights on and all the businesses running.
So the phone line was kind of a great way to keep money coming in on a consistent basis.
But so $150 in 1990 is $360 in today money, which is a lot of money.
For 3 hours of work?
For 3 hours of work, yes. But these are now, she's on the cover of Playboy.
I know.
Like, there should be better opportunities for her than this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. So a big component of Playmate of the Year is making readers feel like they know you. And I'm like, oh no, because they don't know her. They don't know her.
No, yeah.
And like, there's this little fact sheet in the magazine,
on the back of the centerfold.
Like, written in Stacy's handwriting, her name, her measurements, her birthday, where she's from, her perfect date. And I'm like, wouldn't it be great if she was like, that's a tough one. But I'd have to say April 25th because it's not too hot, it's not too cold. And all you need is a light jacket.
Yes.
But old this is where it gets really gross. Like, old photos of her from when she was a teenager. And I took a screenshot of it because it's a photo of her confirmation. And underneath she wrote, my confirmation, and then in quotes, sweet innocence. And then it's like a picture of her with like a cute dog, and she's like, I'm an animal lover. And then the other one is her like in a very just like objectively sexy photo in bikini, and the quote is, really, I'm a good girl, in her handwriting. And it's like, the goal was to make her seem like everyone's fantasy, but also really accessible, and make these men feel like they had a chance with her.
Well, and that's
what no one's really talking about.
Exactly, and that's what Holly is saying. Holly is saying now,
I think it was a bad idea to have the playmates be that accessible. I'm sure so many men called and then felt like they really knew these people. And it's kind of shocking to me that the playmates were asked to do that. I feel like that's kind of crossing a line.
This was a super bad idea on Playboy's part because it's crossing a line to ask playmates to do that. But it's irresponsible and mean and dangerous to tie this to their success.
Exactly.
And like, that is so scary. Just knowing what we know now about the world.
That's what I'm talking about with like the exploitation. Like, yes, they're in charge of their own destiny because they're famous or whatever now, but like they are still at the mercy of Playboy and they're just being exploited.
So just to break it down, like, you see this beautiful woman and you see this little fact sheet in her handwriting. And then you're like, oh my God, like, I feel like I know her. And then you get to talk to her.
Yeah.
I know you're paying money, but you get to talk to her. And then her job, she's thinking, I really want to be Playmate of the Year. I also really need this money.
Yeah.
So of course, everything you say is hilarious.
Yeah.
Of course, everything you say is charming. This is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
Like, Playboy should have known better and protected these women, and they didn't.
I couldn't agree more.
In May of 1991, James Lindbergh starts to call the hotline. And this guy called all the time, and he'd stay on the phone a long time. And remember, it's $3 a minute in 1990.
Yeah, we learned about this guy. He's 32 years old. He lived in California. He's kind of a loner. He doesn't go out often. And Karina remembers him. She's like, he would call all the time. He loved to talk about his grandmother.
Yeah.
She's like, it wasn't sexual, but he was emotionally serious. She says, I realized he didn't have a sense of humor, and that totally freaks her out.
And he would get mad and turn on a dime. So she like tells the story. She's like talking about, because the Playmates were always like car washes and pranks, and it always had to do with like water. So she's like talking about like a water balloon fight and water balloon pranks.
We used to water balloon tourists in Las Vegas. He would say, well, why would you do that? I don't understand. Why would you have done that to people? And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I feel bad about it. I feel really bad. He would get very upset and mad, like turn on a dime.
Why would you do that? And he'd get really mad, like instantly. And he'd make her apologize for these things that she did and make her feel bad.
And she's got to apologize because she wants his vote or whatever.
Right. And then she's like, she'd hang up and she'd be like, oh, I feel gross and I feel bad and like, I don't like this.
And this isn't worth the $150 fucking they're paying me.
Right. So this guy also spoke to Stacy a lot.
Yeah.
And Karina says, in his mind, they became friends.
Yeah. He then goes on to set the record for the most amount of calls. He spent $15,000 on just the phone line.
This is a major red flag.
And we're told he wasn't making a lot of money. He worked as a trucker. He'd been out of work. This is a huge amount of money for him.
Which is an even bigger red flag. He's going into debt to talk to this Playmate that he thinks he knows.
And that he now feels like owes him because he doesn't know how much money she's making. Maybe he thinks all the money is going to her.
And Holly says this guy needed to be cut off.
Yes.
Like the minute he's setting records, like this is a red flag. It's scary. Playboy only cared about the money they were making $3 a minute and not caring about taking care of these women.
Yeah.
And Stacy was also super busy. Like her schedule was full because she was making time for these calls because she wanted to win Playmate of the Year and she needed the money. She was doing modeling gigs. She was doing appearances and she was trying to be a mom.
Trying to be a mom.
And she was trying to be a spouse to her husband who was also so supportive and the country music career. Like she was doing it to be like, see, Playboy, look at what a hard worker I am. You see that as valuable, right? Like make me Playmate of the Year.
Yeah. And Jana was saying like when she would be at home, she would sit for hours on the phone dealing with these like 1-900 people.
It's just so unfair that they make these women do this and like all of these men are sitting in an office building in Chicago.
And it's incredibly low paying. You know what I mean? Like they're like Playboy's making $3 a minute.
Right. Like
and they're paying them $150 for 3 hours.
Like, yeah, she shouldn't be doing extra hours at the phone bank.
No.
When she made history 2 days ago.
Exactly. And if she was an anonymous woman with her own 900 number, she would be rolling in it.
Right. Like how much money of the circulation of that Playboy issue did she get?
Exactly.
Or did she just get paid for the photo shoot?
I'm sure it was just a photo shoot.
I'm guessing she didn't get any money from that.
No, and it's all about the opportunity. It's more and more and more opportunity.
Right. So March 1991, this caller, starts calling even more and staying on the phone even longer. Remember, he's already broken the record.
They had to put a time limit on how long he could talk to her.
So something happens on this call. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But whatever happened makes him very mad, which we know could be absolutely nothing because Karina said he like turns on a dime.
Yes.
So this guy gets mad at Stacy, yells at her, and hangs up on her.
But then he called back like a week or so later and he apologized to Stacy for his behavior. And then he started calling her again.
He finds out her favorite color is pink and he sends her 70 pink balloons. He would kind of latch on to these little details and then show his love with sort of an overabundance.
Now, a week goes by, and he calls to apologize. And immediately, I'm like, no, he's banned.
Yeah,
he should have been banned.
Exactly.
He's breaking records, which is a red flag. He's yelling at Karina and making her feel bad, and now he's yelling at Stacy. This guy should be blocked from the hotline.
We also find out that he finds out her favorite color is pink and sends her 70 pink balloons. It sends them where? You know
mansion?
What I mean? I mean, is that what it is?
I guess.
But wouldn't you think if a man sends 70 balloons to the mansion, you should get his name and fucking block him everywhere?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I mean, absolutely. Like, we need boundaries here. Like, he knew about her kids. He knew about her marriage. And again, part of that, like, Stacy was told to write in the magazine because you're supposed to make these men feel like they know you. It's so dangerous. They don't know you.
No, and the more...
They're not friends.
They're not friends. And the more that she tells him about her real life, the more he feels like he's now been let in.
And Holly Holly says, like, this is a really weird line that gets
Yes.
blurred with some people. And again, in 1990, we didn't have the knowledge or even the words to talk about parasocial relationships.
Right.
We didn't have it with John Lennon either.
I
Remember
know.
we talked about that? Like,
Yeah.
we didn't have that knowledge or like science behind that now, but it's a very real and very dangerous thing.
My question is, does Playboy not see how dangerous it is, or do they just not care?
I think it's, he has the hots for her. I think it's totally downplaying
He doesn't know
it.
where she lives. She should, like, you know what I mean? Like, she shouldn't be giving him information, like...
And if something happens, there are a million girls who want to be on this magazine.
Exactly,
So whatever.
exactly.
Like, I really
Yeah,
don't think
yeah.
they give a shit.
But then Stacy starts making really just, like, bad choices, and she's doing it out of desperation, I think.
Right. So this big fight where he gets mad or whatever and starts, like, trying to apologize happens in March of 1991.
Yeah.
In late September 1991, he didn't call. And she actually finds his number and calls him and says, "Are you okay? Did something happen to you?" So you're getting these mixed messages back and forth.
Now, is she doing that because she still wants his vote? Is she doing that because...
I think she's not realizing the danger of it.
Yeah.
I think she feels bad for him.
And she's
I
just
think
a
she's a
nice
nice person.
Yep.
And I think she realizes that
Honestly, it's something that I would do. You know what I mean?
I think she
I've reached out
realizes-
to listeners that I've never met to
Of
check on
course.
them if
Oh
I
my
don't see...
God.
You know what I mean?
Backtrack, who is hiking. I have
yeah.
like notes on my calendar to
Totally.
check on her because
Yeah.
I'm worried that she's out hiking. You know,
honestly,
like she's
truly.
hiking across the country. But it's different
Yeah.
with this. You know, it's like it's not an Instagram DM. It's like she tracked this guy down and like they had a much more intimate relationship because of being on the phone for all those hours.
And Holly makes the point that, like, she sees it as a fan-star relationship, but this is a major mixed message, and especially to a person with mental health struggles.
Right.
Like, he's going to say, like, my girlfriend just called
And
me.
I think Stacy is probably saying, Jim, this guy, like, he's like suffering. Like, I
Yes.
just want to make sure he's okay.
Yes.
And then we'll never, like, I really don't think she saw it as dangerous as it was.
She does give him her personal number.
So
I'm not blaming Stacy at all. I'm just saying that, like, I can understand why she's doing this.
Right.
Because she's a nice person who gives a shit and can't imagine that this person would ever hurt her.
And this guy's clearly not okay.
Yeah.
Like, she recognizes that enough.
Yes, yeah.
So this guy wants to meet Stacy when she goes to the mansion in September of that year. And
Yeah.
Karina is like, girl, I'm like urging you not to do this.
He wants to meet in person.
In person. And so at first Stacy says yes, but it never actually happens. Either she's too busy or she thinks better of it. Someone says like Jim the husband would never allow this because it risks her safety, obviously.
Yeah.
So one thing leads to another and they don't end up meeting.
But what she doesn't understand is how that sets him off.
So at first you're like, oh, great. Like
Yeah.
they didn't actually meet. But when they don't meet, it starts a very tragic course of events.
Yes.
So we hear this like recreated audio, which is like, I know it's recreated, but like the things that he's saying are terrifying.
And it's actual. It's like it's
transcript.
Like, it's transcript. So it's what was actually said.
It's James Steinberg, and this message is for Stacy Arthur. I want her to know that I'm in love with her.
Saying that he's like so in love with Stacy Arthur, and I'm just screaming, no, you're not.
I know.
No, you're not.
I know.
And now Stacy knows this is bad.
Yeah.
And she very nicely tells him that they just need a break from speaking. They need some time apart.
Holly tells us that is a line that Playboy tells them to say. You never, quote, break up with anybody. You just tell them you want to take a break.
Because I remember when I was working in bars, one bar owner said, like, in terms of cutting somebody off, even if they act in a way that gets them banned from the bar,
Yeah.
in their drunken state, you never tell them that.
Yeah.
Because they will freak out and be like, what do you mean I can't come back? You just
Yeah.
say like, hey, but we'll talk about it tomorrow. You gotta go. You
Yeah.
gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
Because in their heightened state, they just see I'm banned. Like,
Yeah.
no fucking way.
And the hyper emotional, like, that's what alcohol
And
does
that's
to you.
when things get dangerous.
Yes.
So I was taught as a bartender, and I'm like, oh, so I'm going to be handling the drunken guy who's attacking me? Amazing.
Great.
And I had to so many times.
Oh, my
but
God.
the company line at that particular establishment was, you know, it's like, it's not goodbye, it's see you later kind of thing. So, and part of me understands that, but I also hear 100% what Holly's saying about how women are taught to be people pleasers and like, don't upset the precious
Yes,
man
yes.
and like always let people down easy. Meanwhile, Playboy should have stepped in months ago and
Oh my
cut
God.
this guy off.
And they never should have had the 900 number line in the first place.
And they never should have made these women themselves a commodity
Yes.
and manipulated them and exploited
Right.
their personality or just the idea that they're attainable to these men. They're not attainable.
No. Right.
Like, you don't know her.
Right, and like, doesn't it like, I don't know, doesn't it
It's so
reduce the
scary.
power of like her being on, like, she's a Playboy cover model and now she's like answering 900 number calls?
They don't see it that way.
I know.
Because they're all men and they think that like they're catering to the man.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And
It's all about the almighty dollar.
You know, and you're thinking how scary it is to be a woman. And then you're like, it is very scary to be a playmate, especially back then when there was no protections in place at all. And to make it worse, at this time, stalking wasn't even a crime yet.
Right.
So the first anti-stalking law was passed in 1990 in California. And since then, all 50 states, this is a state-by-state thing.
Yeah.
All 50 states have enacted anti-stalking laws, but U.S. Congress enacted the first federal stalking law in 1996. So at the time when this was happening, when Playboy was like, yeah, talk to them, make yourselves feel super accessible, make them think they know you and have a chance with you, there was no protection in place legally for these women.
So because this meeting never happens in Los Angeles in September, James Lindbergh on October 20th sets off from Sacramento on the train.
And then he traveled to Cincinnati, where he rented a car and drove to Bell Fountain, Ohio. And he checked into a local motel. It appeared he went looking for Stacy.
Checks into a motel in her town and then just goes out hunting for her.
To be clear, he's not going to the mansion in California. He's going to her home.
Her home.
Like
he's going to find her.
That really needs to be said.
Yes.
Because like he's just out in the town looking for her because he knows where she lives.
I mean, that is crazy.
And he's not just stalking Stacy, he's stalking her husband, Jim.
Yes.
And we are learning that like this is really a lot about Jim too.
Yes.
So the killer ends up, quote, like running into Jim, the husband, in town. I'm like, oh, no. This was all planned, right?
Well, right, because the killer goes out shopping for gifts for Stacy, then, quote, runs into Jim. But like everybody knows Jim's got this tanning salon. Remember, like that's how Stacy and Jim met in the beginning.
Oh, fancy meeting you here. I don't think so.
Yeah. And he sees Jim and he's like, hey, Jim, would you mind giving all of these gifts to Stacy? Also, while I'm in town, you know, we've been talking on the phone for hours and hours and hours. I'd really love it. And I kind of think it's my right to get to meet her and take a picture.
And get an autograph. And so now Jim, of course, knows everything that's been going on for months and what a creep this guy is. They end up getting into a fight. And then it's like, oh my God, we're back at the beginning.
Yeah.
It sort of hits you like a ton of bricks.
Yes.
Oh, fuck. So they end up getting into this argument in the street. And Jim goes back into his tanning salon and says, if that guy comes back, you call the cops.
Yeah.
Because he's a fucking creep and he's after my wife and I don't like him. And we just had words in the street. Like, Jim is doing everything right here, just all across the board.
But still doesn't see what a dangerous situation he's in.
Right.
Like, oh my God.
So the caller guy, the killer, decides to like start a scene in the middle of the street.
Yeah, because Jim goes back out to he's like now loading his car at the end of the workday or whatever.
And he's like yelling and screaming and people on the street don't know what's going on. But remember, it's the middle of the day.
Yeah.
People on the street have no idea what's going on. And then this guy pulls out a gun.
Yeah.
This shooting happened in broad daylight on a street in front of tons of witnesses. There was like 24 witnesses.
Lindbergh shot him once in the face, twice in the chest, and when Mr. Arthur turned away from him, he shot him 3 times in the back.
Jim was dead almost immediately.
And he just like dies instantly.
Yeah. And there are over 24 witnesses.
Yeah.
I mean, this is someone who was fucking unhinged.
Yeah.
In the middle, tracked down the husband, is stalking this woman and her family.
But there's like 24 witnesses, like you said. The killer runs into a parking lot where he puts the gun to his head and just takes his own life.
And kills himself.
And so like we're back to the beginning where that off-duty police officer walks out onto the street and sees 2 dead bodies in pools of blood.
Like, what is going on?
Yeah. This was when I was like, oh my God, it's not going to be Stacy. It's not going to be Stacy. It's going to be Jim.
Exactly.
That's the shock of the episode.
Exactly.
And like Stacy's not interviewed in the episode. I'm like, where is Stacy? Like, what's going on?
Right. So the cops go to the house.
Yeah.
And like they tell Stacy about what just happened to her husband and who did this.
Yeah.
Now poor Stacy has to tell poor Danielle, who's 5 years old, and all of the other kids they have.
And like Stacy's just like free. She's just screaming. She's just completely frantic.
Right. And now we like learn more about the obsession and why things like this and this like fake accessibility in these parasocial relationships are really so scary, because he was truly obsessed with her.
Truly obsessed with her.
He had pictures all over his house. He recorded all of their conversations, 31 tapes worth.
In the motel that he was staying at in Stacy's town, he was there for like 9 days. Every inch of the walls was covered in pictures of her.
And he was beyond jealous of Jim.
Yes.
He hated her husband.
Yes.
And so you realize like, oh, the plan was to like get Jim out of the picture so you can be with Stacy, who clearly loves you too. And I'm like, oh my God.
And we learned
Lindbergh quit his job in October of '91, almost immediately after Stacy had left him the message about taking a break. His neighbors basically reported that he was acting a little bit unhinged and getting a little bit less predictable.
They were not in a real relationship.
No.
But we know that women are the most vulnerable when they're ending a relationship.
Yes.
And
that's why it takes like 7 or 8 times.
Yes. And that's like, this wasn't that kind of romantic relationship, but that's exactly like the minute that Stacy said, like, I can't talk to you for a while, he quit his job and put his plan into action.
Exactly. So now Stacy was 23 years old, and now she's raising 3 kids on her own at 23.
23 years old.
Her whole life is destroyed. She's absolutely devastated. I mean, her biggest champion and supporter was taken from her by someone who she only met because she was put in this position by this major corporation.
Yeah. And Danielle, the daughter, Jim's daughter, was saying, like, everything was taken from me that day. My dad was physically taken. My brother was never the same. My sister was never the same. And Stacy was never the same. Stacy just falls apart.
Yeah. But after this, she is realizing the abuse that was happening through Playboy.
Yeah.
Because after this, Stacy speaks out about an assault that took place at the mansion.
I mean, this is insane.
And she says, Stacy Arthur says that she was raped by 3 bodyguards. Bodyguards.
Yeah.
Bodyguards.
Like protecting her.
From people like the killer.
Exactly.
And they are assaulting her. And the bodyguards say it was consensual.
Yeah.
It was not fucking consensual.
Of course.
And Stacy, after this, because like all of the, like she's really like looking back in hindsight being 2020, and she becomes very vocal about how Playboy treats women.
Yeah.
Like all of these, and think about like the little things that must have happened to get here. Like, you know, like that's why Holly has all of these shows.
But it's also like she sues Playboy.
She sees Playboy as negligent and as using women for promoting their business, but not taking care of their safety, and obviously the safety of her family around her.
Did not take any care or safety for her or her family. Gave these women no training on what not to do, what not to say. If there were very strict guidelines about like you cannot use your real name or whatever, you can't tell anybody, you can't give any identifying.
There was a limit to how many phone calls or how much time or like if someone is breaking the record, you cut them off.
And like what's crazy is that this lawsuit is seen as crazy in the time. Like she's some hysterical, frantic woman, you know, like trying to get hers from the man.
Yeah, so because she sues Playboy for $70 million.
Yeah.
And it ends up getting dropped because there's no, quote, real evidence.
And like, not only does it get dropped, Playboy, which had just made her a star, completely turns their back on her.
Because Holly says, oh, here's the way Playboy handles tragedies.
Yeah.
They bury them. So they fire Stacy Arthur, who just made history.
Right.
And who is suffering because, thanks to Playboy, her husband's dead.
Like, literally, like, the people who did what Stacy did, Marilyn Monroe, Pamela Anderson, and Stacy.
Right. So after all of that work and everything she did for Playboy, she wasn't made Playboy of the Year. They cut her off. Stacy Arthur gave Playboy everything she had.
At 23 years old, everything was over for her.
Right. And then I'm like, right, but where's Stacy? Like, where is she now?
So, like, that's the whole thing. All of a sudden, I'm like, we have 2 minutes left of this episode. Like, Stacy, what happened to her?
Holly tells us
in 2019, Stacy passed away after a brief illness.
She told me, your dad was the love of my life. She spent the rest of her life looking for my dad.
Her death was sudden and unexpected. And when I tell you there's no information about it, that's what her family wants, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, we don't know the cause of death.
I couldn't even find a picture of the killer on the internet. I Googled the guy, I couldn't find a picture.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, but she lived until, 2019, and then I don't know what happened.
I would just love to know, like, what happened. Like, did she have a happy life?
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure she carried this with her, but I hope, the fact that she had this wonderful family before, I hope they all got through it together.
Yeah.
Because the beginning of this, I believed everyone, the sister-in-law and like her kids, like they were this big happy family. So I hope at least they had each other here. And like, I think she did have other friends. I think Karina was a really good friend to her and they really knew each other. So I hope she was able to lean on that support.
I wonder if her and Holly ever met.
I don't know, maybe.
Like she lived until 2019, like you would think.
Yeah, you would think. And I don't know like when this started production, the show. I don't know.
Yeah.
I wonder if they ever met. That would be interesting.
Look it up, fam. Somebody find out and tell us.
Yeah.
Oh, girl, we did it. What's it called?
It's a mouthful. It's the murder of Jim Arthur and the stalking of Stacy Arthur.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
From the
But
Playboy Murders. Yeah. Fam, join the Facebook group. Over 52,000 people in there. Join us on the Patreon if you want over 450 full ad-free bonus episodes
Crazy.
to download and binge the second you sign up.
Yeah, so just make sure you have enough space or whatever you need.
Between the regular feed and the Patreon feed, we have like 700 episodes.
That's insane.
Isn't that that wild?
Yeah.
We do this a lot. I do
We
meet
do.
you in this room a lot.
At least twice a week.
At least twice a week.
At the very least. 2 episodes apiece, twice a week.
I know, it's
Do
wild.
the math, everybody.
It's a lot for almost 8 years. You know?
God.
Oh, my God.
What do you say it like that? Only 700?
I know. What do we got coming up?
All right, so since this is our bonus episode, so tomorrow on the Patreon, the Jinx Season 2, Episode 5, which is called Mostly the Truth, and this is when Durst takes the stand.
Wild.
And then next Tuesday on the regular feed, you get The Thief Collector, which is on Amazon Prime.
Yes. All right, fam, stay tuned. We'll give them the trailer for The Thief Collector, I guess.
Yeah, sure, because that's what's on the regular feed,
Yeah.
and this lives on the regular feed.
All right, so stay tuned for the trailer for that, and we love you, and we love you.
Okay, yeah, we love you, and we love you.
And we love you, and we love
Stay
you.
safe out there, everyone.
Yes.
Please, God damn it, I can't take it any much
know.
longer.
I'm the same.
Ugh.
All right, bye.
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 It was a heist you'd see in a Hollywood movie.
Authorities still don't know who took it.
It's a mystery, an unsolved case.
Many thought a $160 million masterpiece was gone forever until it turned up in Silver City.
Rita and Jerry Alter were my aunt and uncle.
Oh, they were definitely soulmates, and he would do anything for her.
Their house was full of souvenirs from their travels around the world.
It seems like this couple is really the story here. They're the mystery.
If you got the right psychology, you go after that painting. You take it, you make it yours.
They saw themselves as masters of victimless crimes.
It's just crazy to me that it was just hanging up on their wall.
We didn't know the real Jerry and Rita.
The Thief Collector is the darkest of them all.
You know what I'm still stuck on is the. I didn't know it was tequila. I'm still stuck on that.
I thought it was a lemon job. I didn't know it was tequila.
I have one password I use for everything. I know you're not supposed to do that.
Does it remind? Sometimes it's like your password appeared in a breach. Do you want to change it?
Oh God,
yeah. I probably shouldn't be saying this in public, but I just have all my passwords saved on my computer, and I use my finger on my MacBook to like.
You
open
do?
it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Changing them all tonight. Now clearly.